Hello, Africa. A very good evening to you. It's good to see you again and Happy New Year to you. I am so excited to see you and I believe you are equally excited to have us in your homes. My name is Harriet Nartey and this is the only show that brings you happenings from the diplomatic community in Ghana and around the world. This is the first live show since we started 2022 and so we are very much thrilled. We have so much that we will be sharing with you. As a matter of fact, we are just continuing from where we left off in 2021. But just that we have added a few twists and turns here just to make the show more rich, more informative, educative, and of course to make sure that you are always updated with happenings from the diplomatic community. Today, I'll be talking about ECOWAS and Mali, and of course the growing trend of military coups on the African continent. Now, military coups have been a regular occurrence in Africa shortly after independence, and there is now concern they are becoming more frequent. Sudan has this year experienced two such events, one in September, which failed, and later in which General Abdel Fattah Burhan dissolved the civilian arm of a transitional government and took over. In Guinea, President Condé was toppled by the army in September, and in neighboring Mali, there have been two interventions by the army in less than a year. The most recent one was in May. In Niger, a coup was thwarted in March, just days before a presidential inauguration. So are military interventions occurring more often on the continent? Are they? That's a very interesting question that we want to explore on the show today. So we decided to take it from a journalistic point of view. My guest, resource person, will join me on the show. He is the international correspondent to one of the credible media houses in the country, Multimedia, Joy TV, Joy FM, and Maxwell Agbagba is his name. When I come back from the break, we will start the deliberations right here on the show.
Polygamy does not know adultery, so you should.
Polygamy knows. I disagree.
Wait a minute.
Polygamy
Wait a minute.
If you are not 25, you have no business driving a commercial vehicle.
The only person who can take your driver's license and retain it must be a police officer of the rank of inspector and above.
Using office hours to engage in social media is a ground for you to be what? Dismissed.
When you are raped, you can justifiably walk into any government hospital or a licensed medical facility for an abortion.
A will takes effect only after the person is dead.
Pure cocaine is not addictive. What is addictive is when it's adulterated.
Join the Law Express panel this and every week as we delve into all these relevant topics.
Law Express, Mondays at 7:15 p.m. and a repeat on Thursdays at 5:45 p.m.
Hello. What are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those socio-economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And Personality Profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story from inspirational personalities. Hey, listen, you really cannot miss The Couch with me, Amma, but still the only TV show with a hat. The Progressive Woman's Show is that space for frank, open, honest, provocative, perhaps even revolutionary conversations about today's woman.
If you go to the banking sector, there are people there who want to sleep with you before they give you a job. If you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a civil servant, there is someone who will say, oh, I can get it for you easily. All you have to do is drop your pen.
It was something that was demanded of me. My editor, my news editor in the newsroom, thought if I don't pull down my skirt, I was not going to be put on air.
I am yet to come into contact with anybody asking me to sleep with him to go on TV. I will not sleep with any man for a position. I will sleep with a man I want to sleep with for the pleasure of it.
When governments come to power and they say that the women are not showing dynamism and the women, for me all that, forgive my Latin, this time of the day, all that is bullshit.
I practice public speaking in church. Okay. I practice service in church. I practice leadership in church. So those are things that's why the church is important in our lives.
And that's how you do it. It's not buy Range Rover and do something in church.
It takes me right there.
In church.
When you mention Jesus, you don't have to say Jesus. You have to say Jesus.
But they say it's a man's world out there, isn't it? Unfortunately, I don't know why, because we seem to be doing all the work. They are the head and we are the neck. Excuse me, can you be a head without a neck?
No, please. No, please.
Yeah.
Well, hey, ladies, let's continue to hold up the sky. And welcome back. You watching Diplomatic Affairs with me, Harriet Nartey. We are coming to you live from the studios of Pan-African Television, stationed in Accra, the capital of Ghana. And of course, the address is Abelemkpe. So this is the only show that brings you chronicles from the diplomatic community. Every Saturday, we bring you all the updates when it comes to diplomatic affairs. Anything that you need to know from the diplomatic community, international community, you name it, this is the only place that you will get all the information that you need. And Happy New Year once again. Like I said, I'm very much excited to see you. This is the first live show for 2022, and we decided to concentrate here at home. Let's discuss Africa. Let's begin to pay more attention to African affairs. Let's follow happenings on the African continent. And by doing so, we decided, as if we knew there was going to be a very interesting summit, you know, and then we were there at the summit. ECOWAS, Authority of Heads of State and Government, they held a meeting. I think that was last Sunday, and it was very intensive to decide or to look at Mali's future. Today, I have with me on the show a colleague. He is in the communications business. He's a journalist with one of the credible media houses in the country, Multimedia, Joy TV, Joy News, and he is the international correspondent and, of course, a member of the press corps at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. Maxwell Agbagba.
Yes.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I think maybe you should say that you're also the dean for the
right. I serve as the dean of the ministry, and the ministry's press corps. So it's good to have you on Diplomatic Affairs. Happy New Year.
Many happy returns. Many happy returns. Feels good to be here. Privileged actually to be here.
Well, thank you very much. You were at a night with the diplomats.
Yes, I was there. Great events. In fact, I don't have the right words to describe what I saw because it blew my mind. I thought it was just going to be a small program, but just walking in and seeing the diplomats talk about, you know, your program, the Diplomatic Affairs, here on Pan-African TV. I mean, it's more or less like that only program that brings them together, that gives them that voice, you know, to also talk about happenings, you know, around them. And I think we need to commend you for a yeoman's job. You know, like, yeah, great job you're doing so far. Of course, Rocky Dawuni was also there. He said quite a lot. You know, it's a great show so far, and I'm particularly excited that you've kept this running for quite
2 years.
Yeah, that's quite a long time to do that.
Yes.
You know, and I'm particularly excited about it. Yeah.
Well, we are more thrilled to have you on the show as well. Maxwell,
yeah.
I know you said you do more of international reportage. You do articles, writings, and of course you have a show as well. That's your own program that you run.
Oh,
let's talk briefly about it, because I know.
Okay, so that's Sunday edition, but that's not really connected to.
Okay, right.
So I think my relevance would be with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you know, and what we do with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you know, press corps. So that really generated an interest in also focusing on what is happening, you know, elsewhere. Of course, if you're with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs press corps, you really would want to know what is happening,
current
in other places, you know. And I'm happy that we get to talk about it from a journalistic point of view. You know, many times issues come up and journalists do not have the opportunity to air, you know, their views about what is happening. We are always the one asking questions.
We are on the ground,
you know,
on the field.
And many times too, when you have your own opinion, you are told to keep your opinion to yourself because you are not the one answering the question. You are not supposed to hold a position on this particular matter. Well, I'm sure today we get to speak our own views about what is happening.
Well, you get to speak your view on what is happening.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about, let's go briefly to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and talk about what do you anticipate to see this year with regards to Ghana's foreign policy?
Well, with regards to Ghana's foreign policy, in times past, we've had a bit of, you know, Mempemwasem, you know, Maximum Home Bisa and that kind of thing. What I want to see more is active participation with, you know, other embassies, with other diplomatic, you know, envoys. What I want to see is more engagement, you know, especially from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. I think issues happen, and quite understandably, we try not to take positions on certain matters because issues of diplomacy are very delicate issues, and if you don't take time, it may explode, you know, in your face. Quite understandably so. But I think that we've gotten to the point where we need to make our point. If we have to take a position and make our point and make it forcefully, we should take that position and make it forcefully. Example is just recently, the United Arab Emirates, you know, took a very, in my view, terrible, you know, decision about flights coming in from Ghana and other West African countries. I know Cote d'Ivoire was also affected by that directive. Other African countries were also affected.
Right.
You know, they took a decision that said that flights from Ghana
without consulting the other party.
You know, cannot come into the UAE because of a rising number of COVID cases. And indeed, we all know that Ghana really, if you're talking about COVID cases, yes, our COVID cases were on the rise at a point. But at the time that that decision was taken, comparatively, you cannot really say that our cases were higher than the Western countries. So why take a decision that would affect an African country and then spare a Western country which has, you know, higher COVID numbers than we have? You know, and I was quite surprised that we were not, I mean, we rarely, I mean, we didn't even talk about it. We didn't even hear a lot of noise about it. It was just the ranking member of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, Okudzeto Ablakwa, was in the forefront actively talking about it. You know, now that travel ban has been lifted, and I'm particularly happy with it, but even when it was lifted, it came with certain conditions that would have to be respected before anyone can travel to the United Arab Emirates. Honestly, I feel it's totally disrespectful. I feel it's disrespectful. I mean, the UAE, especially that they didn't consult us, took that decision, and now they are giving us criteria that we're supposed to meet before we get into the UAE. So in situations like this, I feel, you know, it's important to reciprocate. It is important to reciprocate.
Diplomacy is reciprocal.
You know, I think it's important to reciprocate. In fact, just some days ago, Nigeria made us aware, you know, that is possible. They did it. Twitter, you know, took an action that affected the president. The president said, we've banned Twitter in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria with a very huge population of over 100 million.
Huge market.
Yeah, they knew that they have the market. They knew that they have the power. They have the strength. Now, they sit with Twitter and discuss measures by which they can allow Twitter back into the country and say that, look, you'd have to set up an office, you know, in our country. You have to pay taxes to the government.
Now they're giving them conditions.
No, they're giving them conditions because Twitter also knows that, look, Nigeria is a huge force to reckon with when it comes to, I mean, this space. And we need to respect that. But sometimes we need to call the bluff of, you know, some of the countries. Call the bluff if you have to reciprocate in a good manner, still keep the relationship going, but not just sitting down and allow yourself to be bullied
in the name of peace.
Yeah, thankfully I'm not a diplomat, so I can say what is on my mind.
Don't get me into trouble. No, but I mean that's well said, Maxwell. I think sometimes you have to call a spade a spade.
True.
Just
not
as
a
it
big
is,
spoon,
not a big spoon, you know. So at the end of the day, we are also looking at our interests.
True.
You and I, we are not diplomats, so we are journalists first. Our job is to go to the ground, to the fields, and report what is happening there. And there are times that we would have loved to hear authorities say more in terms of, you know, certain decisions taken by other parties. We would have loved to see them come out, engage the public, and also give us their opinion or from their perspective, so we can back that up with whatever they have given us to, you know, give to the public. But there are times that I know that we have, you know,
maybe very soon we'll get there. I pray and hope so.
We will get
so
there.
that's my resolution for this year. That should happen.
So you are looking at reciprocity in Ghana's diplomacy.
Exactly, that's what it is. I think you captured it more succinctly for me. Yeah, reciprocity is very important. Call the bluff of others when they bully you is very important. You need to show that you're also a force to reckon with, you know, in this diplomatic space. Very key. Yeah.
Right. So yes, let's talk about Africa. Let's talk about affairs happening on the African continent, current affairs happening on the African continent. Let's talk about the rising coups on the African continent. There are a lot of issues. I don't know what you think, but I would like to get your view on this. This is my observation, though. It looks like when it comes to African affairs, we lose touch with really what is happening.
True.
You know, on the African continent. It looks like the various neighboring countries, individually, we are only interested in what is happening in our space. Beyond, we are not that interested. Hardly do you find the youth, you know, talking about it, getting excited, or when they need to share their views, you will see them sharing their views as well on the many subjects that, you know, have emerged in the past. Going forward, I'd like to see us do better.
Exactly.
What is, you as someone who does more when it comes to international reporting, I mean, paying attention to Ghana beyond our borders. How can we get the youth, before we talk about the rising coups on the African continent, how can we get the youth to begin to pay attention to African affairs?
Well, for me, I think right from the get-go, young people especially have been cut off in critical decision making in Africa and in other places too as well. But mainly in Africa, young people have been cut off. So even in times
that's what you think.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Very interesting.
Even in instances where decisions are being taken, it is not the young people who are making those decisions.
Right.
The decisions are being made by septuagenarians, octogenarians, nonagenarians in some cases. And these are, of course, we cherish the experience that they bring to the table. We cherish all the things that they come along with, you know, more sense of being responsible and all of that. But you'd also agree with me that young people have a lot to offer.
Right.
And when we're going to the table, there's a lot that we can bring onto the table, you know, as well. But right from the start, we've been cut off. So for instance, in Ghana, for instance, you cannot be president until you attain a certain age. You're 30 years, you cannot be president. You're not qualified to be president. You're too young to be president. Even certain key positions, sometimes you're considered as young, you know, to be there, to get there. If you are, first of all, barring us from even being part or being the highest decision makers, let's say, you're barring me, first of all, from being the president of this country as a young person, you're taking away that power from me, for instance. That active participation that you'd expect from me, you know, in the governance process, you are taking that power away from me. And that does not give me, you know, the opportunity to actively take part in the governance of the country. So you speak to a lot of young people, and they're really not interested in what is going on because they feel like they are in their parents' home. Their parents are still around, so they are the ones who are supposed to make the decisions for them.
And they have no say at the table.
And they have no say, you know, at the table. We go for ECOWAS meetings. You see, I mean, the average age of a president of an African country, and sometimes you marvel. You look at other jurisdictions, and you can see that there's the attempt to actually provide the platform for young people to also get there. But in our space, sometimes, unfortunately, you can see a deliberate effort to stifle the progress of young people within that particular space. And sometimes even the young people among themselves are to blame for it. Because someone will tell you they're ready to go for a position, their own colleagues will tell them that, look, you're too young.
So that was going to be my next question. Do we help with getting to where we want to see ourselves as young people when it comes to taking leadership positions, for instance? Do we groom ourselves up to a point where we feel like we can be entrusted with certain positions in the country?
There are many who have shown that, look, they can do it. But there are others also who've run away, from that particular space. And especially also for women, for instance. How many women are within our political space?
Not much.
Not many, and that is also because of the political mud slinging that goes on in there within that space. It makes it so unfavorable for women. So if you want to be in there, if you want to be the Margaret Thatcher of our time and be in the politics,
Merkel,
and be in that political space, you need to be really strong and very tough, because there's a lot of political mudslinging that goes on, that goes on there. Sometimes that makes it very difficult for young women especially to thrive. And you walk into maybe a pub or something and there are discussions going on, and people will be talking about young female politicians, and sometimes the assumption is that they rode on the back of someone to get to where they are.
Right.
You see?
That's very insulting.
So I speak to a lot of female friends of mine, and they tell you that, look, I actually have an interest to go into politics. But many people within our space, within Ghana, within Africa, actually think that a young lady, 30 years or maybe let's say 25 years, cannot get to the top of a political career without riding on the back of a man. That is the perception that unfortunately many people have. And that pushes a lot of people away into getting into that space. The issue about affirmative action is also, is there. Empowering women to get into that space. I honestly think we've not done enough, in that regard. Other countries like Rwanda are creating a thriving environment for women.
Quite exemplary.
Exactly, for women to dominate in that space. But we are not making the conscious effort for our women to get there. So I think we need to do a lot more. It has to do more with policy issues. It has to do more with a change in mindset. It also has to do with in our view and mindset about young people who want to get into politics, about women who want to get into politics. All of these things matter.
Right. Okay. So, Maxwell, so far so good. We have a long way to go. The show is an hour show. It looks like we have so much to talk about. I do hope that we are able to, do all the PowerPoints that we have put together. I will take this from you. Now, let's come back home. We're still talking about the young people in Africa. Okay. Let's talk about the rising coup d'etats on the African continent.
Yeah.
Then we will zoom into ECOWAS' decision to introduce stricter sanctions on Mali.
Yeah.
I want us to talk about Mali is a big deal for Africa. It is the 8th largest country on the African continent, and there is so much that we can do if we want to see integration on the African continent, especially at this time when we are talking about economic integration.
True.
We have to make sure that we do not have these uncertainties anywhere on the African continent to be able to have the goal, the economic aspiration that we want to see, achieve the economic aspiration that we want to see on the African continent. What do you think is the cause of this rising coup on the African coup d'etats or military takeovers on the African continent?
I think first of all, let's look at what the conditions that give rise to some of these coups that we are talking about. And you realize that most of them can actually be found in Africa. Most of them can be found in the West Africa sub-region. In very rare cases, we saw the situation that triggered the Arab Spring, which affected Egypt, which affected Syria, which affected Yemen, which affected Tunisia. I'll come back to that later. But the point I want to make is there are some similarities even with the Arab Spring. So you ask yourself, what are the conditions that give rise to these coups? One, you can talk about bad governance. You can talk about corruption. You can talk about poverty levels. And if you listen to many of the coup makers, the common denominator for many of them and the reason that they gave for starting a coup are the three factors that I've mentioned. I mean, that's more or less to be like the template for the military authorities that take over in those countries. So you look at a country like Mali, for instance. These are the three reasons cited: poverty, corruption, bad governance.
Right.
You look at Guinea, for instance, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. Three reasons cited: corruption, poverty, bad governance. Even if you bring it to Ghana, all the coups that we've experienced, many of them, the common denominator for these coups are corruption, bad governance, and poverty. Now, again, if you look at it, what would make a coup popular? What would make a coup popular? What would make a coup popular is what will resonate with the people, what the military government tells them. So usually, before a coup would happen, there'll be grumblings. You hear people complaining about, oh, things are getting so hard. It's difficult. We can't make ends meet. Many of us are living below the poverty line. There are no jobs. Even when we work, we do not get the money. These are the triggering, factors. Corruption. People will say, oh, there's a lot of cronyism, going on. We feel that the government is not providing a level playing field for all of us. We feel
mismanagement.
We feel it's just the elite that is benefiting from what we, just a few people benefiting from what we have. Corruption, bad governance. People are not happy with the governance of the country. So many of the coups that we've seen in African countries sometimes has to do with elongation of the tenure of certain presidents. So we've given you a specific time to rule us. It's getting to the time for you to leave. You don't want to leave and you want to stay in power. So what happens? The military government comes in. So the military actually thrives on the grumblings and the complaints of the people. That is the only way the coup will be popular. Now imagine a situation where where people are happy, they have jobs. A lot of young people who actively actually participate in this coup have jobs. They're living above the poverty line. They get 3 square meals daily to eat. The security situation in the country is good. Even when the military comes out to push the idea of a coup or indoctrinate some of the citizens with the ideas of a coup, it will be rejected. That coup is not going to be popular. It's not going to resonate with the people because the people will feel detached from it.
Right.
But if the complaints start coming and nothing is done about it, then the military takes advantage of the situation to step in and say, this is what the people are complaining about. We want to step in and solve the situation. So let me zero into the Mali situation. We have an elected president in Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, ruling. This gentleman had to rule up to 2023.
Right.
Legitimately so.
He was elected.
He was elected.
In 2013.
Yeah. Now, an opposition group in Mali, M5 RFP, starts, there's complaints about people suffering bad governance, corruption. High poverty levels, and all of that, which really, you could actually say, it's not the creation of the president. Although he can be dragged into it, you cannot entirely say it's the fault of the president. We all know what conditions African countries find themselves. But this complaints actually started. M5 RFP decides to lead the way with this complaints, start protests. It resonates with the people. The people start getting on the streets with a lot of demonstration and protests. Then the military comes in. Assimi Goïta and his people, come in. August 2020, they seize government. That is how it all happened, and that is how it all started.
When the elected president had not even finished with his term.
Had up to 2023 to actually lift power. They stepped in, captured power. And you see, usually what they do is, the military usually when they step in, they try and give you they sort of make you believe that
we are here for the people.
We are here for the people.
Right.
We are the saints. You know?
Yeah, we want to save the people.
Yeah, I mean, in Mali, for instance, the team that took over, Goethe's team, they said it's the National Committee for the Salvation of the People.
Right, right.
If I'm in Mali and I'm suffering, I'm not employed. And these people come in.
Is the leader.
Exactly. And they come in and say, they are the committee, National Salvation of the People. The name alone, Salvation of the People. They are in to save you. What want to make you believe them? You definitely believe them. You buy into whatever they're trying to sell to you. So they seize government, and they make the people believe that very soon, give us just 18 months, we'll hand over to a civilian government. Even that one, up until ECOWAS stepped in.
So that was, so before, that was the discussion. That was the agreement between the junta and, of course, the ECOWAS leaders. Of course, when they sat at the table, there were lots of negotiations, you know, there were dialogues, there were, you know, a lot of engagement, diplomatic engagements at the table. And at the end of the day, they were in agreement together. So they came to a consensus and said, okay, so 18 months will be enough for us to reverse the country back to, reverse the country to a constitutional rule. Now here we are.
So you see, you know what it did?
What happened?
ECOWAS gave them a timeline to return the country to civilian rule. So the first one, the civilian Bandor and his other guy who were actually handpicked of a sort to be there.
Yeah, the interim president.
The prime minister, you know, Assimi Goeta, actually found a way with a flimsy excuse of them sabotaging the political charter and the transition, found a very nice way to kick them out. So he got rid of them. Now you got rid of them, you've come in, and now what are you doing? You're trying also to extend your stay. You know what they did to give it some kind of legitimacy? So they gathered their own people into some sort of, you know, a consultative assembly to let people believe that this is coming from the people. Quite a number of them, I mean, I watched that conference, quite a number of people got a consultative meeting and said that now they want an extension to like up to about
but stakeholders were not involved in that meeting.
Exactly. Now extension to 5 years. ECOWAS says, no, we don't want that extension. So what do? Let's tighten the sanctions, you know, on Mali. And that's what we're seeing now. And okay, you come with your question.
Let's tighten the sanctions on Mali. But at the end of the day, the question, that my follow-up question will be, who is going to suffer the most? Is it the transitional authorities or the civilians, the Malian people? Who is going to suffer the most at the end of the day? Well, you're still watching Diplomatic Affairs. We are streaming live on Facebook and, of course, on YouTube, so you can share your views with us. If you have anything regarding the subjects that we are talking about or discussing, you can just share your view. Go to our pages and share your views with us, and I will read all of them before we close the show. I will take a break. When I come back, we are still talking about Mali and ECOWAS.
The Progressive Women's Show is that space for frank, open, honest, provocative, perhaps even revolutionary conversations about today's woman.
If you go to the banking sector, there are people there who want to sleep with you before they give you a job. If you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a civil servant, there is someone who will say, oh, I can get it for you easily. All you have to do is drop your pen.
It was something that was demanded of me. My editor, my news editor in the newsroom, thought if I don't pull down my skirt, I was not going to be put on air.
I am yet to come into contact with anybody asking me to sleep with him to go on TV. I I will not sleep with any man for a position. I will sleep with a man I want to sleep with for the pleasure of it.
When governments come to power and they say that the women are not showing dynamism and the women, for me, all that, forgive my Latin, this time of the day, all that is bullshit.
I practice public speaking in church. Okay. I practice service in church. I practice leadership in church. So those are things that's why the church is important in our lives.
And that's how you do it. It's not buy Range Rover and do something in
It takes me right there.
in church.
When you mention Jesus, you don't have to say Jesus. You have to say Jesus.
Well, they say it's a man's world out there, isn't it? Unfortunately, I don't know why, because we seem to be doing all the work. They are the head and we are the neck. Excuse me, can you be a head without a neck?
No, please. No, please.
Yeah.
Well, hey, ladies, let's continue to hold up the sky.
Right, so welcome back. You're still watching Diplomatic Affairs with me, Harriet Nartey, and I have Maxwell Agbagba from Joy TV, Joy News. He is more into international story, putting together stories happening, you know, from beyond the borders of our country and of course other places. And today we are very thrilled to have him on the show. I also work with him at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and so I'm excited to have him on the show as we discuss the rising coup on the African continent, the rising coup d'etats on the African continent. We want to find out what are the causes of the rising coup d'etats on the African continent. And so far so good. He's been sharing his views on some of the factors, you know, that may be the cause of rising coups on the African continent. Bad governance was cited, corruption, poverty, and of course mismanagement and all sorts, as he shares his view on this subject. Now we are talking about the authority, ECOWAS authority, heads of state and governments imposing stricter sanctions on Mali. The question, my next question is, Maxwell, who is going to suffer at the end of the day?
Interesting question.
And is that going to change, get the junta to reverse or rescind their decision to continue to stay in power?
Earlier in the week, I had opportunity to listen to Professor Kwesi Enin of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, and he actually predicted that the military government can actually stir up the emotions of the people, indoctrinate them to make them believe in the sovereignty of their country, stir up their emotions, get them onto the streets to protest, stir their emotions, anti-ECOWAS sentiments among them. And that's
dangerous.
That seemed to be happening already. You know what's happening today in Mali?
The people to protest.
You know what happened in Mali yesterday? So yesterday in Mali, in Timbuktu, in Bamako, and in other cities, the military actually organized protests, and thousands of people poured onto the streets to protest the sanctions, you know, so stirring up anti-ECOWAS, sentiments amongst the people. And that is what has started. And that was predicted earlier in the week by Professor Kwesi Enin. And I think at this stage, it is very, very important for us to sit back and say, really, is this what we all want for ourselves already? The military government knows that it is biting. The sanctions are biting already. Because earlier in the week, we had Air Côte d'Ivoire, we had Air Senegal cancelling their flights to Mali. I had opportunity to interact with one of the executives of the Ghana Union Traders Association about the likely implications of this. And he told me that, well, because a lot of people from Ghana do not go to Mali to go and trade, Mali is not really a strong trade partner for Ghana. But guess what? Just within the same week, a friend of mine who lives in the United States actually What he does is he moves to Mali to go and get fabrics, African fabrics, some unique African fabrics from Mali, to go back to go and sell to people living in the diaspora. And this is like a thriving market, fabric market. He gets a lot of business for it. Now he tested me and go like, yo, what is happening in West Africa? So this is what is happening. His flight got cancelled with Air Senegal, got cancelled to Mali.
So Bamako. He could not make it to
Mali.
So
he could not make it. Another thing Professor Kwesieni talked about is that this will just affect just a section of the elitist group that we have. But for the many people who are going to be affected, it's going to be the ordinary people.
Yes.
And my fear is that this is likely to exacerbate the insecurity situation that we have in northern Mali and then in central Mali. We know since 2012, Mali has been reeling from, some political insurgency there. Since the ethnic Tuareg rebels tried.
It's also amongst the poorest countries in the world.
Exactly. Also among the poorest.
And a country that is so rich in gold, in cotton.
Yeah.
I mean, one would ask, how?
They say in the abundance of water, something is always tasty, And it's actually shocking that since 2012, when this insurgency activities started by the ethnic Tuareg, rebels, which later we had some armed groups also actively taking part. France and other forces and then the Malian force actually tried fighting it. Then they scattered to other parts of the country. So now we are talking about northern Mali being a place where it is not too safe. Even central Mali now is not a bit too safe for people. And MINUSMA, which is actually the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, the United Nations has actually said that it is one of the most dangerous missions. And you ask yourself, why is it one of the most dangerous missions? And they tell you that MINUSMA, which was created in 2013, more than 100 United Nations peacekeeping officers have died trying to maintain peace in Mali. And this is a country we are trying to tighten sanctions, on. Now, according to the United Nations itself, between 2016 to 2000, the killings in the tri-border regions of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso increased. Did not only double, it did not only triple, it did not quadruple, but it grew in 5 folds between 2016 to 2020. And this is according to the United Nations. 4,000 people died in the space of 4 years. In the space of 4 years. In these tri-border countries I'm talking about. Niger, Burkina Faso, and then Mali itself. They share common borders. And already we are beginning to see a spillover of the insurgency in Mali trickling into Burkina Faso, getting into Niger, and when it gets to Burkina Faso, you see, Ghana can say, oh, we are the oasis when it comes to this desert of political instability. We can say that. But the moment it gets to Burkina Faso,
it's trickling down.
It's trickling down.
It's brewing.
And a lot of business people who travel from Ghana to Burkina Faso to buy tomatoes and all of that, and all of these things.
Economically.
So I think that it's gradually getting to a point where we cannot say that we are not concerned.
Or we are not affected.
Or we are not affected.
We may not be affected. Directly, what about the other countries on the African continent?
Exactly.
In any case, we are trying to push for integration, economic integration on the African continent. My question is, how do we achieve this? At the end of the day, if we have these uncertainties happening on the other parts of Africa.
It's actually interesting that when ECOWAS was formed, the main focus for ECOWAS was for economic integration, like you mentioned. That was the main purpose of ECOWAS. It was later that we began to realize that the political instability within the sub-region, so we need to do more, not just economic integration. But even the purpose for which it was created, the economic integration, ask yourself, how have we achieved that? Since 2003, ECOWAS has actually tried to get us all to start using a common currency. In 2003, it got postponed. In 2010, it got postponed. In 2020, it got postponed. and now it's been pushed to 2027.
There is hope. There is hope. Don't tell me
since
you've lost
2003,
hope.
more than,
Don't tell me.
No, wait, since 2003.
Don't tell me you've lost hope. There is hope.
Since 2003.
I believe gradually, steadily, we are making progress in certain domains. So I think that with time it will all come together at the end of the day. But these are some of the things that we need to begin to pay attention to.
I think that if we want to start an economic integration, the first thing that we need to start with is with this common currency that I'm talking about.
So there was the launch of the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System. I don't know if
how many people know of that?
Well, this was recently launched, so I'm sure you will definitely. I know you will always dig to find out more about this, but just to scratch the surface, you know, this is a Pan-African initiative under the African Union, of course, under the auspices of the African Union, and AFTA is spearheading this initiative.
But
so, regardless of your currency on the African continent, this was done, I think, a few days ago on Friday.
Yeah.
So, yesterday or so, or a day before yesterday, I'm not really sure. But this is an initiative, a Pan-African initiative to improve on trading on the African continent. So regardless of where you find yourself on the African continent, you can still trade without necessarily having to change your currency into, you know, a foreign currency. So I feel like we are making some progress in certain areas.
That's actually the sad aspect of it. That even when we make the decisions, the common people, the people on the bottom of the ladder who are likely to be affected by these policies.
Do not know about the policies.
Do not get to know even about the policies.
So you ask yourself, a sensitization program to get the public, I mean the entire continent, African people sensitized on this great initiative.
Sorry that I'm laughing so hard.
Right,
we started with so much prospects. Many of us optimistic about about ECHO.
Have you lost hope?
Of course I've lost hope. I mean, of course, I've lost hope.
Does this resonate with the young ones out there as well? Can you say
many people, many of my friends, many of my colleagues have also lost hope. See, even here in Ghana, we are struggling to deal with economic integration. Ask yourself, it was just recently that the Ghanaian Union Traders Association, they were up in arms fighting their own Nigerian brothers, even just here at Tiptoe Lane. So if Ghanaian traders are fighting their Nigerian brothers who they are in the same business space with, what makes you believe that in the South region, ECOWAS, which has a population of over 300 million people, will be able to achieve that economic integration that we talked about? We were here, and we're in Ghana. We heard about how Nigeria closed its borders. People couldn't take rice into Nigeria, for instance. You'll be stopped at the borders. How do you achieve economic integration, you know, with all of these things that I'm talking about?
That's
when already your eco currency, that you're trying to bring into existence, continues to be a pipe dream. You continue to postpone it. You continue to not really take the decisions that will make us that will bring this into existence.
Do you think our priorities are misplaced?
Well, I think truly yes.
When it comes to the regional body and of course the continental body's operations.
Misplaced priorities everywhere, honestly. And I don't think I have to mince words, you know, in saying this. I think it's been misplaced priorities, honestly. We're not doing what would inure to the benefits of the people. And like I said, that is what keeps creating a thriving environment for coup d'etats to take place. So bad governance,
the suffering
corruption,
of the people.
the suffering of the people. And I talked about the Arab Spring, for instance. Right. There's a lot of lessons we can actually draw from the Arab Spring and how it toppled governments in Syria, it toppled Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, in Yemen, and in other places. How did it start? In 2010. A young man who was selling vegetables on the streets of Tunisia, who was selling products and other things in Tunisia. His items got seized by a police officer. What did he do? He set himself ablaze. And that resonated with the people. He set himself ablaze because the system was not good for him. The system was not helping him. And that resonated with the people. So that's why the Tunisian people went on the streets to kick out Ben Ali. And then it had a rippling effect, you know, in other Arab countries that we're talking about. So maybe we need to be careful as a West African sub-region, because looking at how these schools are moving from Mali.
Not just West Africa, of course. You just look at what is happening in Sudan.
In Sudan,
for instance. Look at what is happening in Niger. You look at what is happening in, of course, in Guinea. And, recently in Burkina Faso, a few days ago, there was an attempted coup.
Thankfully, it was thwarted. Thankfully.
Thwarted.
Yeah, thankfully.
But what is the way forward? I mean, we are wrapping up. Like I said, just when the conversation is getting interesting, that's when time
I'm actually surprised the time actually went so fast.
So fast, So, but what is the way forward? Do you think, at the end of the day, the sanctions would get the junta to give up on power, illegally occupying or, controlling Mali?
Well, the military government actually described the sanctions as inhumane. They said it was harsh and all of that. So that gives you an idea about how it is already biting the military government. And that is why yesterday they organized a protest to stir up the emotions of the people to go on the streets to go and protest against the sanctions by ECOWAS. So that's an indication that it is biting already. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is that, is this affecting the main people that we are targeting? The people who started this coup in the first place. Is it affecting Colonel Assimi Goïta and his people? Is it affecting them?
The transitional authorities.
Is it really affecting them? If it is not, then
we have to
review it to take sanctions that would rather affect them, because they are directly because they are the engineers of the coup. Just before I wrap up, you asked about how we can stop this. If you go on Google and Google how to stop coups in Africa, I'm sure a lot of suggestions will come up. But I think we need to be as practical as possible. I already mentioned the conditions that give coup d'etats to thrive in Africa, in West Africa, in this sub-region. ECOWAS needs to be strong when it comes to elongation of tenures by African leaders. If we vote for you using the power of the tongue, you don't have the right whatsoever.
Respect the Constitution.
Respect the Constitution. Don't go and sit in a bedroom somewhere and say that you had a dream and God said that you should extend your tenure.
The chairman of ECOWAS, who is the president of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his speech, also emphasized on the need for African leaders to respect the Constitution.
Exactly.
There are various constitutions.
That is very
Otherwise,
important.
we will be seeing more of these coup d'etats on the African continent.
That is a first step. Secondly, make it possible for your people to live. Make it possible for them to live their dreams, live their aspirations. That is it. In that case, even when the military comes in to indoctrinate them with the idea of a coup, they will turn it down and say, look, our lives have been turned around by the government that we voted for, so we are not in support of this coup, and that coup is not going to be popular.
All right, Maxwell Agbagba, thank you very much. Now, John Nartey says, I'm watching live from Mobole, right? That's my hometown, somewhere in Pram. And of course, Alfred Duarte says, watching live from Chebi inside Ebriakwa State College. Thank you very much. And Besa Koku Mensa Emmanuel says that these ECOWAS leaders don't have the brain. Well, thank you all very much. We have so many messages, but for the sake of time, I cannot read everything. Thank you very much, Maxwell.
Thank you so much
I
for
think at the end
Harriet.
of the day, we are talking about transparency. We are talking about respect for the various constitutions on the African continent. We are talking about respecting the people who also give you the mandate to rule. So when power is given to you, don't abuse the power that is given to you by the people. Otherwise, we will continue to see the rising coup d'etats on the African continent. And as we champion after, we cannot achieve after with all these uncertainties on the African continent. My name is Harriet Nartey. Maxwell Agbagba has been my guest on today's episode of Diplomatic Affairs. He's with the best, one of the credible media organizations in the country, Multimedia, Joy TV, Joy News, and also a member of the press corps of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. Thank you very much.
Of which you are the dean.
And thank you very much for watching. I will see you same time next week. Have a good evening.